The latest available Federal Reserve data shows that U.S. households headed by someone between 45 and 54 that have retirement accounts hold a median balance of about $150,000. You didn't mishear that number. Not $1.15 million, just $115,000. Half of those households have less than that sitting in their retirement accounts. You look at a guy in this spot, and he probably takes home more money today than he ever has in his entire life. He owns a nice house, he takes his family on summer trips, his teenagers go to good public schools. He looks in the mirror and thinks he's doing great. You feel exactly the same way when the direct deposit hits every 2 weeks. That feeling is the exact trap. You don't feel broke, you look fine to your neighbors. But the math hole you are standing in gets a little deeper every single month. We need to talk about 4 specific financial traps that ruin the futures of guys in their 50s. These guys didn't mess up by being wild with their cash. They get trapped because they did everything right and got successful. The decade that everyone tells you is your peak earning window is secretly the most dangerous 10 years of your financial life. The numbers behind this look so bad that most wealth managers won't even show them to you. You probably think your retirement hinges on picking the right tech stock, but we need to look at a heavy mental model first. Think about a massive cast iron ship anchor, not a rusty one, but a gleaming, polished anchor painted gold. Everyone on the dock points at it, they respect how hard you work to buy it. Your 30-year mortgage is a gold anchor. Your fixed monthly bills are gold anchors. That car lease, the country club dues, the travel hockey team fees for your son. You tossed every single one of those over the side of your boat. You think these things give your family a stable life. They absolutely do give you stability, right up until a bad storm hits. When the stock market tanks 30% the year you want to quit working, that anchor doesn't save you. It just holds your boat in one spot while the water pours over the sides. The guys who actually walk away at 60 with real cash didn't collect the heaviest anchors. They quietly cut the ropes while everyone else was busy polishing theirs. Guys hit 46 or 47 and a weird switch flips in their brains. You spend your 30s trying to conquer the world and climb the ladder. Then suddenly you stop worrying about growing your pile of money and start obsessing over protecting it. You tell your wife you are just being responsible. You feel like the mature adult in the room. But wrapping your arms around your current lifestyle is often the fastest way to go broke. You aren't actually protecting real cash in the bank. You are protecting the way you look to other people. Keeping up that image charges you rent every single day. By the time a guy hits his 50s, he has spent 25 straight years saying yes to things that sounded totally fine in the moment. You bought the house when interest rates looked great. You leased the SUV because you drive clients around. You put the kids in private middle school because the public one looked rough. And now you can't pull them out without ruining their friendships. You pay for lawn care, a housekeeper, and a dozen streaming apps. You signed up for all of it because you asked yourself one simple question. You look at your checking account and ask if you can cover the monthly payment. That cash flow question ruins millions of retirements. Covering the monthly payment tells you zero about your actual wealth. A guy can easily end up paying $3,000 every single month just for cars sitting in his driveway. He should be putting that $3,000 into a brokerage account to buy his freedom. If you look at his bank app, the math clears. He never bounces a check. But those two choices send his life in totally opposite directions. Let's look at a guy named Dave. Dave is 51 years old and runs regional sales for a mid-sized parts supplier. He takes home $190,000 a year. His dad never made that kind of money. Dave thought he'd be rich if he ever hit that number back when he was 28. Dave writes a $4,200 check every month for his mortgage and taxes. He drops $750 a month leasing a nice BMW because he worked hard for 2 decades and wants a smooth ride. He bought a boat he takes out maybe 6 times a summer. The boat loan costs him $600 a month, plus another $100 for winter storage. He pays $450 a month for a golf club to network with other guys. Dave has 2 teenagers in private high school burning through $22,000 a year each. Before Dave even buys a gallon of milk, he owes the world $12,500 every single month in fixed bills. The government takes their cut of his $190,000 salary, leaving Dave with about $10,600 in his pocket each month. He literally spends more on locked-in commitments than he makes before he ever takes his wife out to dinner. Dave doesn't have a gambling problem. He isn't buying flashy jewelry. He just spent 25 years agreeing to totally normal things without doing the math on the total package. That $12,500 is the minimum toll Dave pays just to wake up in his own bed. You might look at Dave and think he needs to ask his boss for a raise. But Dave's spending habit grew way faster than his savings habit for 15 years straight. Getting a bigger paycheck is not the same thing as getting rich. Your 50s will brutally expose the difference between those two things. The American Psychological Association ran the numbers in 2024 and found something wild. People making over $200,000 a year feel the exact same amount of money stress as people making 75 grand. Those high earners stress out because their lifestyle simply stretched to eat every new dollar they made. Both groups run on treadmills, but the rich guys just bought a faster treadmill. Think about what that invisible lifestyle creep actually steals from you. Imagine you looked at your bills at age 40 and cut out just $800 a month. Maybe you drove your old truck for a few more years instead of upgrading. You drop that $800 into a cheap index fund every month and just leave it alone. The market gives you a very normal 7% return year after year. By the time you hit 65, that boring choice turns into $472,000. You didn't invent a new app or work 80-hour weeks. You just refused to buy one gold anchor. But having a low bank balance isn't even the scariest part of this decade. The second massive trap hits you when your timing goes bad. Most guys worry about not saving enough cash. Your real nightmare is having a decent pile of money and watching the sequence of the stock market chew it to pieces. Wall Street guys call this sequence of returns risk. It sounds like boring textbook math, but it will destroy your plans faster than almost anything else. You probably never ran this specific math against your own life. Let's say you turn 58 this year. You check your 401k and see $450,000 sitting there. You tell your wife you want to walk away from your desk at 63. If the market goes up a steady 7% every year, you hit the finish line with about $630,000. It looks easy on a spreadsheet. Now picture what actually happens in the real world. You retire, and the market crashes 35% in your very first year of freedom. Then it bounces back and gives you great 9% returns for the next 19 years. The average looks perfectly fine on paper, but you need cash to buy groceries. So you pull out 4% of your money, which is $25,000, while your account is bleeding out. You are forced to sell your investments at a giant discount right when they need to sit still and grow. You lock in those painful losses month after month. Your money goes to zero in 14 years instead of lasting for 25. Real people live this exact nightmare. Back in 2008, older guys watched their retirement accounts drop by 38% right as they handed in their badges. Guys who retired in 2007 lost half their cash exactly when they needed it most. The market bounced back a few years later, but their personal accounts stayed dead because they sold at the bottom to pay their light bills. Bad timing ate them alive. I want to introduce you to a guy named Tom, and if this breakdown is helping you see your own blind spots, hit the subscribe button so we can keep looking at the real numbers together. Tom is 54 years old. Everyone in his neighborhood thinks he has it all figured out. He handed his money to a fancy wealth management group 12 years ago. His broker puts him in a standard mix of stocks and bonds. Tom gets a thick envelope in the mail 4 times a year, looks at the line graph, and throws it in a drawer. He feels fine. Tom has $600,000 sitting with this firm. His broker charges him 1.2% every year to watch the money. That equals $7,200 a year out of Tom's pocket. The paperwork never shows Tom that big cash number. They just show him tiny percentages that don't trigger any alarm bells in his head. Tom could take that exact same money and drop it into a basic Vanguard fund that charges almost nothing. If you take that tiny 1.2% fee and stretch it over 15 years on a $600,000 pile growing at 7%, it rips $182,000 out of Tom's future. Read that again. $182,000 disappears from Tom's family tree and buys his broker a new boat. That fee chips away in slices so small that Tom never gets mad about it. His broker also never tells Tom to move his money into a Roth account to save on taxes. If Tom shifted his cash the right way over the next 8 years, he could save $60,000 to $90,000 in taxes when he finally quits working. It is a completely legal, smart move. Tom's broker definitely knows how to do it, But the broker gets paid to manage the pile, and moving money into a different bucket means he might not get his cut. This is where Tom's life gets incredibly messy. 3 massive life events punch guys in their 50s at the exact same time. I have never seen a standard retirement spreadsheet that plans for all 3 hitting in the same month. You can usually handle one bad break, but the combo punch makes guys think they will die at their office desks. Event number 1 is your parents getting old. The average American guy starts paying his parents' bills right around age 52. 1 out of every 5 guys you know is doing this right now. The baby boomer generation simply didn't save enough cash. They live way longer than the math predicted, and their medical bills explode in their late 70s. Medicare pays for a hospital bed. It does not pay for a nice assisted living facility. You will pay between $5,000 and $7,000 a month for that care right now, depending on where your mom lives. The average older person has maybe $70,000 in the bank. That cash covers about a year of care before the facility director looks at you to cover the gap. Tom's mom needed a memory care unit last year that cost $6,200 a month. She only had $85,000 saved up. Tom now writes a $3,000 check every single month just to keep her safe, stacked on top of his own crazy mortgage. Nobody warned Tom about that gold anchor. Your kid's graduating high school triggers the second giant financial hit. Most guys budget for raising a child, but totally miss the price tag of launching an adult. A 4-year degree at a private nonprofit college costs about $51,000 every single year right now. You factor in the tuition, dorm, food plan, books, fees, and other expenses, and you are looking at about $205,000 for just one kid to get a bachelor's degree. If you have a 16-year-old and an 18-year-old eating dinner at your table tonight, you stare down a $400,000 post-tax bill over the next 6 years. You want to give them a great start in life. You want them to walk across that stage without crushing student loans. But if you didn't max out a college savings account since they were in diapers, that cash has to come from somewhere. You end up pulling from your current paycheck, taking a loan against your house, or raiding your retirement accounts. Every single one of those choices carries a brutal hidden cost. You just don't feel the pain until you actually write the check. This pulls money right out of your compounding machine during its most critical years. You trade your own financial freedom for their college bumper sticker. A late divorce completely shatters the math for guys in their 50s, and nobody likes talking about it. Men over 50 get divorced twice as often today as they did in the 1990s. It accounts for more than 25% of all splits right now. Going through a divorce at 34 means you just divide up a few early investments and start over. Going through one at 53 means you slice up every single thing you spent your entire adult life building. The courts split the retirement account straight down the middle. The family house gets tied up in a legal fight that burns thousands of dollars a month just to untangle. You might end up paying spousal support for years, and sometimes you pay it forever. The numbers behind this are absolutely brutal. A guy going through a late divorce loses an average of 77% of his total net worth. You lose that money in one single courtroom process right during a window when your brain feels completely scrambled. Your judgment hits rock bottom while you make the biggest financial calls of your life. Our guy Tom actually separated from his wife last year. He sits right in the middle of this specific nightmare. You put these 3 things together, and they form a perfect storm. You pay for a parent's care facility, you cover huge college tuition, and you bleed cash in a divorce settlement. Any one of those things hurts, but the combo punch makes a smart guy think he might never retire at all. The guy managing your money rarely tells you how dangerous this mix really is. Planners love to tweak your stock mix or harvest a few tax losses, but they almost never look at your messy real life and tell you to cut your burn rate. Having that hard conversation doesn't fit neatly into a 30-minute quarterly review. If they tell you the truth, you might actually pull money out of their firm to survive, which drops their own paycheck. Understanding how they get paid tells you a lot about the advice you receive. You sit in their nice office, and they look across the desk and tell you that you are doing great. Translated to plain English, that sentence usually means your portfolio lost money, but everyone else lost money too, so please don't move your cash. That polite little sentence costs guys their entire future. You walk into your 50s carrying a completely invisible trap, and nobody wants to talk about it. By the time a guy hits this decade, he built a very clear professional identity. People know you as the managing director, the guy who started the company, or the smart expert everyone calls to fix things. That reputation earned you real money over the years. But carrying that social weight turns out to be one of the most expensive things you will ever do. The zip code you live in sends a signal to everyone else. The shiny car in your driveway sends a signal. The fancy watch, the private school drop-off lane, the expensive family trip to Europe. Every single one of those choices acts like a hidden tax you pay just to prove you still belong in the club. Nobody hands you a legal disclosure showing what that status costs over 20 years. You just quietly bleed cash to look successful to people you barely even like. This approval tax sneaks up on you because every single purchase feels totally justified in the moment. You feel like you earned it, but you actually just bought another heavy anchor. Let's look at two guys who graduated from the same business program back in 2001. Both went into corporate finance, and both took home about $220,000 a year by the time they hit 52. The first guy, let's call him Mark, built a huge prestige footprint. He bought a house in the right suburb, drove the right luxury SUV, and paid for the right country club. He took his family on an international trip every summer that burned $15,000 minimum. Mark looked incredibly successful if you just drove past his house. But Mark quietly pulled cash from a home equity line of credit just to close the gap between his paycheck and his lifestyle. He never admitted he had a cash problem because every single expense felt totally normal for a guy in his position. At 52, Mark had $420,000 sitting in old retirement accounts and roughly $230,000 tied up in his house. His liquid net worth barely cracked $115,000. That means he only had $115,000 he could actually touch to replace his income without selling his family home. He built a lifestyle that trapped him at his desk. The second guy, let's call him Kevin, walked a completely different path. He didn't live like a monk, but he made very deliberate choices. He bought a 2-year-old car and drove it until the wheels fell off. He bought a nice house in a good school district, not the absolute most expensive one. He took his family overseas every other year instead of every summer. Kevin maxed out his 401k every single year starting at age 38. He dumped another $2,000 a month into a dead simple index fund at a cheap brokerage. By age 52, Kevin hit $1.2 million across his accounts. He paid down 60% of his mortgage. His liquid net worth hovered right around $950,000. These guys made the exact same money during the exact same decade. One guy bought approval from his neighbors, and the other guy bought cold, hard options. The darkest part of this story is that Mark totally knows what happened. He just couldn't stop the train while it was moving. The approval tax stays invisible until you run the math, and by then, you spent 20 years paying it. You lose the ability to walk away from a boss you hate. We can break this down into a really simple math test. Picture two 50-year-old guys who both bring in $180,000 a year. The first guy runs a monthly burn rate of $11,000. That means he owes $11,000 in fixed bills before he even buys a cup of coffee. After taxes, he takes home roughly $9,800 a month. He runs a giant deficit every single month, covering the gap with credit cards or home equity just to break even. The second guy runs a monthly burn rate of $6,000. He saves $3,800 every single month. Fast forward 15 years with a 7% market return. The first guy maybe scrapes together $140,000 if he gets lucky. The second guy crosses $1.1 million. They worked in the exact same economy and made the exact same salary. The only variable that actually mattered was the burn rate. At 65, the second guy pulls $45,000 a year from his accounts, adds his social security check, and lives comfortably on $76,000 a year. The first guy gets his social security and maybe a few thousand extra from his tiny pile. He either works until he hits 68 or runs out of cash. The real problem isn't inflation. The problem is the burn rate. Let's check back in on Tom, the guy going through that nasty divorce. He finalized his split 8 months ago. The judge gave his ex-wife the house and roughly half of his retirement accounts. Tom went from holding $600,000 to just $290,000 in investable assets at age 55. He looks at a huge multi-million-dollar gap if he wants to actually cover his old lifestyle. But he stopped lying to himself and did the hard work. He rented a much smaller apartment and slashed his fixed monthly bills from $9,500 all the way down to $4,100. He fired his expensive wealth manager and dumped his money into a 3-fund Vanguard mix that charges almost zero in fees. He even started moving money into a Roth account to take advantage of his lower tax bracket right now. Tom definitely won't retire at 62 anymore. He probably has to push it to 68, but he won't drown. He grabbed a knife and finally cut the golden anchor. Doing that felt incredibly painful for his ego, but it literally saved his financial life. He stopped caring about what the guys at the golf course thought and focused on his actual math. You need to do 3 specific things right now to fix your own math. First, you have to calculate your exact burn rate by this weekend. Open your banking app and pull your credit card statements. Add up every single fixed bill you owe, the mortgage, the car payments, the insurance, the streaming apps, the minimum debt payments. That final number is your floor. That tells you what it costs just to wake up in your house. If that number eats up more than 60% of your take-home pay, you have a deep structural problem. You can't fix a structural problem by clipping grocery coupons. You fix it by eliminating a heavy obligation. You already know exactly which anchor needs to go. Second, you have to stress test your retirement date. Stop looking at spreadsheets that assume the market goes up 7% every year in a straight line. Build a model that drops your portfolio by 30% during your first 2 years of retirement. See what happens to your cash when you pull money out during a crash. If your plan blows up in that scenario, you don't actually have a plan. You just have a hope dressed up in a nice chart. Third, you need to audit every single fee you pay for financial help. Look closely at your advisor fees, your mutual fund costs, and your insurance products. If you pay more than 0.3% a year to manage your money, you are throwing cash out the window. A big 1.2% fee looks tiny on a quarterly statement, but it steals a massive chunk of your future freedom. You have to hunt those fees down and kill them. The guys who actually walk away from their desks at 60 with real choices didn't have a secret playbook. They just calculated their burn rate, spotted the golden anchors, and cut the ropes before the tide rolled in. Most guys just sit there polishing their anchors right until the water hits their chin. They refuse to let go because every single anchor felt like a huge win when they bought it. Boring, lazy index investing builds real wealth because you just keep buying and do nothing clever for 30 years. It won't make you sound like a genius at a dinner party, but it buys back your time. If you want to see how these boring numbers actually stack up in real life, hit the subscribe button and let's keep running the math together.